Hi there! You're about to listen to a vintage episode of the Under the Microscope podcast. While the content is still as relevant and as interesting as when it was recorded, our webpage has changed. You can now find us at thesciencetalk.com/real-scientist-nano. Welcome to Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials and nanoscience, who would be curating the RealSci_Nano Twitter account. Hi everyone. Today we have with us Tiffany Harte, who is a senior research associate at the Department of Physics at the University of Cambridge in England. Hi Tiffany, wonderful to have you on Real Scientist Nano. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yep, I'm really happy to be here and I'm very well, thank you.
Great. So let's start by understanding your career journey so far. So how did you end up at the Department of Physics in Cambridge? Tell us. How did it all happen?
Okay, so I feel like it's a journey a long time in the making. I actually first started thinking about becoming a physicist when I was quite, I guess, a young teenager. I used to love fantasy books, and in particular, I loved Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials trilogy, which has so much science inside it. It's got parallel universes, it's got dark matter, discussion of atoms and particles, and I was just hooked. I thought this was amazing. It has a wonderful woman physicist character who is really important in the last book in the trilogy. And so it was really reading these books that made me think, oh, I want to work with magic, and maybe physics is the next best thing. So I just started reading all I could about it, really, and just gradually decided, yes, this is what I want. I probably enjoyed chemistry more at school, actually, but I always gravitated a bit more towards the kind of physical chemistry side. I loved discussion of atoms, atomic structure, and yeah, that ended up being what I continued to love all through my undergraduate. So I was an undergraduate at the University of St Andrews, and I absolutely loved it there. It's up in Scotland, right next to the sea. Our teaching labs had a view of the beach. It was lovely. Cold, but lovely. And they in St Andrews were really fantastic for getting undergraduate students involved in research. So I had the opportunity there to do paid summer projects. And the first one I did there was with the Cold Atom Group at the University of St Andrews. And there I worked on creating or calculating holograms that can be used to trap atoms. And I just fell in love with everything. I fell in love with the lab, with the experimental techniques we were using, with my project. I guess kind of knew right then. It was, love at first sight.
That sounds so good. That sounds like with the beach view and with the hologram. It sounds so cool. It's like perfect. It's like the perfect scene in the movie where you fall in love with like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. That sort of thing. Sorry, go on. I interrupted you.
Oh, no. So yeah, I actually, in that project, the group had a journal club each week, and I presented one week. I was terrified presenting to all these people who knew much more physics than me. But I presented a paper from a group at the University of Oxford, again, cold atoms. They were doing some work on rotating atom clouds, and I thought, wow, this is cool. So I thought, okay, I'll apply to them for my PhD. Ended up taking that PhD position. So doing PhD, or it's called a DPhil in Oxford. Not actually quite sure why. In atomic and laser physics in Oxford. And while I was there, I worked on both methods for optical trapping and magnetic trapping of cold atoms. So that was, I guess, less fun or more serious than the summer project, I suppose, as it's always going to be when you start a PhD. You know, but it was a really great opportunity to get involved with every aspect of the experiment. I think that's one thing that I love about cold atoms as a field, is that when you're working in a cold atoms group, there tends to be maybe 4 or 5 people. You all have to get involved and be able to fix anything that breaks. So yeah, that was my PhD, working on, well, primarily these magnetic traps. So I learnt a lot of electronics skills, which turned out I didn't think I'd enjoy them, but I really did enjoy electronics. But then I wanted a bit of a change, and I joined the University of Cambridge as a postdoc in 2017 after completing my PhD. And my first job in Cambridge was to join a team that was building a brand new experiment. And the goal of this experiment was to study the physics of flat energy bands and frustrated magnetism using cold atoms that are trapped in optical lattices. So these very complex or very detailed patterns of laser light. So the idea being that the atoms trapped in these laser light patterns reflect the geometry of a real world system, and that it's much easier to measure and probe and slightly change and look at the effects of those changes than the real system would be. So we spent, gosh, three and a bit years just building the apparatus. Had a bit of an interruption with COVID shutdowns, but that apparatus is now complete, and that is just so exciting that suddenly we're being able to start to work on physics. So of course, that was the point where I kind of stepped back from that experiment.
Hey, no!
I know, I'm so jealous every time I look at what they're working on. Fortunately, I'm still able to be involved, but over the last, gosh, I guess about 18 months, I became involved in a new grant proposal, which was a joint collaboration between several universities and institutions to use cold atoms as to build a detector network for fundamental physics phenomena. So this includes things like acting as an observatory for things like dark matter and gravitational waves. And this was funded, fortunately. That was really exciting, a really exciting process to be part of. And the project started in May of this year. So since then, I've been leading a kind of growing team in Cambridge that's responsible for developing the technology to prepare the atom clouds that we will use in this detector. And so I've kind of got a foot in a couple of experiments at the moment, still trying desperately to stay as involved as I can in the simulation experiment, because it's just so exciting. But also I'm really enjoying this chance to have a bit more independence in setting up this new lab. I've still got my PI there for support and guidance, but I'm getting a lot more freedom this time around to set up the lab a little bit more as I want, which feels like a huge responsibility, but it's very exciting. And I actually just heard on Friday, so 3 days ago, that I've just been promoted to senior research associate. So
congratulations!
Thank you.
Oh my God, that is so cool. Exciting times for you. There are challenges coming up, but that's part of the process, right? You will only grow.
Absolutely, yes.
Sounds amazing. It sounds so cool. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a very exciting month with various grant applications, fellowship applications, and finally hearing about this promotion was just fantastic to kind of get that recognition and that support from the department.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure the department values you. I'm sure they see that you're an amazing scientist. Uh, that is really cool. I'm very happy for you. So it's quite an interesting journey you've had. I mean, I'm really jealous of the beach, to begin with. But no, seriously, it's quite an interesting um, journey you've had. And now the projects that you mentioned, the ones that you're still trying to be part of, and the ones that are coming up now, and like you're developing, like, and leading this growing team. Uh, the work, the science that is happening here in both these projects and all the other projects that you're involved in, where does all of that fit in this big picture of materials or nanoscience?
Mhm.
Because it's quite a broad field. Yeah, from the materials or
Yes.
nanoscience perspective, where does that fit? Um, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to. I'm just curious to find out if it does or not, because it already sounds cool. And here we go again with the cool jokes. Go. Uh,
So yeah, I think one of the things I like the most about the field is how many other fields it can apply to, and how in different universities you'll see it categorized in different departments. So I think it's kind of on the borders of a few different domains. So yeah, I work with these clouds of atoms that are cooled to temperatures where their quantum statistics start to become important, and where we can then very precisely control them with magnetic or optical fields. And depending on what we're applying these cold atom clouds to, might be working with a cloud of hundreds of thousands of atoms, or be trying to probe the behavior of just a handful of atoms and be able to make measurements of at the individual atom scale. So those like last sorts of measurements is probably where it fits in a little bit more with the materials nanoscience kind of field, because this is the regime of quantum simulation. So where we're using our cold atom systems to build really nice, easily tunable experimental models that contain all the properties of a complicated material or a physical system on a length scale that you can more easily measure. So in that regard, we're trying to make measurements that can complement measurements that are being made in material science, for instance, or in solid state physics. So by building these simulations. The new experiment, I guess, is quite different. It fits more into the astrophysics or astroparticle physics region. In fact, we're categorized here in the high energy physics department for this new experiment, which always feels really funny to me, given that our actual experimental techniques are very, very low energy. But this is taking all the exact same experimental techniques that we would use in quantum simulation, but applying them to this very different problem of making precision measurements. So yeah, we kind of float around between different fields. I guess we're always on the lookout as well for overlaps and new applications of the technologies.
Okay, that makes sense. And you explained it in a very nice way. I understand it way better now. It sounds to me that you have been involved, and you are also now involved in a lot of very, very interesting research projects. And this is a tough question, I know that. If you have to pick one, so I apologize in advance. If you have to pick one research project that you're most proud of, or the most fun or quirky one, could you pick one and explain it to us in simple words in the section we call In Other Words?
Okay, so this is tough. To be honest, I think it's very often whichever one I'm working on at the moment. Gosh, so I think
that's a cop-out answer.
Oh
No.
no, I know. I will give you a proper answer. So I think probably if I had to pick one that I kind of keep returning to, one project that I keep returning to, and that I feel the most pride over, is probably actually my first research project in a sense. So this was, I guess, really my final year undergraduate research project. which was based on my previous summer project in the same group. And I think, so this project was based on, once again, designing holograms for to create optical traps for cold atoms. And I think the reason that I'm maybe the most proud of this is that it was the first time that I was presented with a research idea and given the opportunity to really take some ownership of that. And behind the scenes, of course, there were supervisors who were offering me all the support that I needed, but they were also willing to just let me explore what I wanted to explore. And I think, yeah, so I was able to make this project my own. It was quite a short, self-contained project, I guess, by design, because a lot of the research that I do is quite slow to develop with quite long-term goals. So it was great to be able to work on this self-contained project and really see the impact of it. So to talk a little bit more about what that project entailed, I mentioned that it was based on calculating holograms. So really that's just about how to create patterns of laser light that we can use to trap atoms among other particles. So it does have some broader applications as well.
Right.
And this particular approach was based on the technology of a spatial light modulator, which is an array of liquid crystal pixels that can programmably slow down different parts of a beam of laser light, which means that you can really precisely shape the phase of the light field and use this to create a really interesting intensity or phase pattern after some optical system. And these shaped laser profiles can be used to trap or otherwise manipulate particles, including cold atoms. And there are lots of different methods of working out what phase profile you need to imprint using the spatial light modulator onto the light to get the effect that you want at the output. But the method that I developed was based on minimization of some user-defined cost function, which allows for very direct control over any output parameters that you can encode into that cost function. And it was just such a fun project to work on that I didn't want it to stop when I finished my degree. So I actually continued collaborating with my former research group, and we used this to develop the methods further, get more precise control. So in my original project, I just shaped the intensity profile of the light. In some further work, we used it to simultaneously shape the intensity and phase of the light. There's some more work that I really want to do on this if I can find the time. At the moment, that's a bit of a problem. And we also even applied the same computational methods to a completely different problem, which was related to quantum simulation and working out whether you could use quantum simulation techniques in certain situations. And yeah, so I just really enjoyed that project. I enjoyed the methods and have really great collaborators on that, and I'd love to be able to return to it and explore some of those ideas further. So
Okay, well, I can imagine, I can understand why you picked this as one of the projects that you're most proud of, or because it seems like you did get a lot of experience, not just from the scientific perspective, not just the science, not just that the science was exciting, but also the environment you were in was also very nice and very supportive. Absolutely. And very encouraging, and for it's like an incubator you need as a budding scientist. Yes. And that is very, very important. So that's good. I'm glad that is what you had, and I hope you do get to go back to this experiment with a fresh team, with a fresh perspective a few years later. Now, how do you approach this problem or something like that? I hope you do get to do that, and I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
Not that I just you will get to do that. So far, what I think I'm right about this, but I sense that you love the research aspect of being a scientist. Now, my question to you is, what else do you like about being a scientist other than the
Mhm.
research or the lab work itself? What else do you like?
Yeah, so yeah, outside of the direct kind of lab techniques, playing around, being able to build experiments, I think more generally, I love that there are just so many opportunities for learning. And being based in a university as well, you have that bit more flexibility to, if you see an interesting idea, to have the chance to pursue it, even if you don't necessarily have a solid goal in mind. And yeah, so there are just so many different ideas, so many different skills that have to come together when you're designing and building a new experiment. And I think it's just really wonderful having a job that has so much variety and that allows you to become as comfortable as you can with as many of these different skills as possible. And I think related to that, there is also the knowledge that you cannot be the expert in absolutely everything as much as you'd like to be. And so there are just so many other talented people that you get to work with as well, who are working
Right.
on a huge range of projects that they are truly passionate about. And so there are just so many fantastic opportunities to learn from other people, collaborate with people. I think that openness and the opportunity for learning and collaboration is probably my favorite thing about my job.
Ah, that is so nice. I'm so glad that we have active researchers like you who think like this and who it's science is in good hands. I'm very glad about that. That's really nice to hear that. And you did mention that you do have students as well, and I
Mhm.
think you have had good mentors or good advices at least so far in your career, and you still have them around you. So what advice would you give to scientists who are starting out today, or
Mhm.
if you were to go back in time and you were starting out today, what advice would you give yourself?
I think the most important advice for me would be remembering that you are so much more as a person than just your research output. You are more than your work and more than your science. Like, as much as you kind of love your job and try and make the most of all those opportunities, I think it's really important to set time aside to make time for your interests outside of your work. Whether that's making sure that you maintain a good support network and spend time with your friends, or pursue just other interests, and it doesn't matter if those improve your science or not. So for instance, when I was doing my PhD, one thing that really helped my mental health and just helped me enjoy life was joining the University Scottish Country Dancing Society. Met some fantastic friends there, loved dancing, and I'm so glad that I made that time every week to go along to class and forget completely about my work. I think there can be a lot of glamorization of overwork in academia, and a
Yeah.
lot of pressure to prove that, prove how dedicated you are and how good a scientist you are by just making that your entire life. And certainly I understand that draw. There are times when my work-life balance is certainly
Skewed.
not, yes, certainly skewed in the work direction. But I think that's something that I actively try to
Work
work
on.
on, and that I would advise other people, especially right from the start. Yeah, remember that you as an individual and your happiness is more important than your latest paper.
Yeah, love the science, but don't lose yourself in the science, in the process.
Yes, that's such a nice way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah, that's a very, very important piece of advice because you're right. Especially in academia, it's overwork is glamorized and it's expected. It's just it needs to change. I think it's very, very important because I'm not a biologist or a neurologist, but I think it's been proven that if you're working on something, you need to switch off even for 1 or 2 hours, be it dancing, be it whatever. Just do something completely different and come back to the work, and then you have even more fresher ideas and a different perspective of sorts.
Yes.
And yeah, at least for that, you love science, so at least for that, do that, like disconnect, even if you are a workaholic. Not you, but one is a
Yes.
workaholic. So yeah, that's a very good piece of advice, and it's also nice of you to admit that you don't have the silver bullet of the work life balance. You are
I
also
know.
still figuring it out.
I wish I
uh,
did.
because that also, I think, seems to be a common issue that not a lot of people talk about. People just assume that they are really bad at balancing their work and life, and they're like, oh
Hmm.
my god, everyone else is doing such a better job, and then you just go down that spiral. um,
Yes.
so we need to be vocal and we need to talk about these things. So very good that you're talking about this. I'm very glad that you're talking about this and addressing these issues on the podcast. um, I hope your research experience has been wonderful. It sounds like it has been wonderful, and it is wonderful in the present, and I hope it continues to be wonderful in the future as well. But if you had 3 wishes to improve your research experience,
Hmm.
what would you ask for? And I'm not promising anything here, please.
Yes. So I guess for me, at my present research stage, so as an early career researcher, a postdoc, so um, I've had the good fortune to be in one university for 4 years now for my postdoc, and I'll be here for the next couple of years as well. But I think postdocing comes with quite its own set of challenges, and I think all of my 3 wishes would all be intertwined to try to address that. So I think the first thing for me would be for research staff, including PhD students and early career researchers, to have a much clearer career progression framework within research, but also with kind of recognition of skills development for people who don't want to, pursue academic research, who want to do something else, but having some framework there so that you can see, okay, like these are the skills that I need to develop to work towards that next step. Because I think, at least in my experience so far, that has been very unclear how you go about career progression. I think the second thing would be feeding into that, making sure that there is sufficient training for, again, PhD students, early career researchers, and later stage academics as well, to make sure that they are actually fully equipped to progress to the next stage in their careers. Making sure that if you are entering a position of management, that you've had management training. Likewise, if you're teaching, that you've had good teacher training. And I guess my third wish kind of leads on from that a little bit as well, which is about developing, and maybe this would require a bit of a cultural shift as well, but developing a career framework that recognizes that different people have different skills, and that collaboration can bring out the best in everyone. So it not just necessarily being about who has the most papers or the most prestigious papers, but putting together teams of people who have the relevant skills between them, and valuing all of those skills and all of those people equally. That would be my dream for an academic future where where collaboration and teamwork are valued more highly, I think, than they are currently.
Yeah, That makes sense. All three very, very, very important wishes. I wish I could just say that, yes, tomorrow when you wake up, Tiffany, it's all going to be exactly what you asked for. Job security and trainings and collaboration and teamwork is valued. Uh, that's not the world we are living in at the moment, but
No.
I hope we are working towards it. And if we have active researchers like you who are aware and mindful of these things and who are voicing, and who you are part of the system, you're part of the system, so you
Yes.
can have a stronger effect, you can have an impact, you can be in a position where you can drive the change. And I'm sure that's going to happen because you're an amazing scientist, so that's going to happen. That's going to be taken care of. So I hope we are working towards that future, and it does happen, that all three wishes of yours do come true as soon as possible, because a lot of people are talking about it. We
Yeah.
have a lot of guests, and more than 50% of them are talking about these issues, or these um, situations, or these uh, wishes, so to say. So I think we all just need to sit together in one room and come up with a master plan, and being like, go to the world, to a retreat for a weekend or something at the beach, and
No,
we
that sounds nice. Yes.
after the weekend be like, yeah, this is how it's gonna be. This is a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, uh, and then the universities have to accept it. See, now I'm putting out my wishes out in the world. Uh, but I seriously hope that we are working towards
Um,
it, and I think we're working towards
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think there does seem to be increasing discussion and increasing kind of recognition that there are aspects of the research culture, beyond what we've discussed today as well, that do need to change.
Yeah.
And I think, that's definitely a positive step. I guess the difficult part is actually making that change happen.
Yes, that is the difficult part. But we already are at the first step where the conversations are happening, so that's good.
Yes.
Um, Excellent. Tiffany, this has been lovely getting to know you as a scientist, as a human being. I feel like a little bit more. But before I let you go, I have to ask you. I can't let the guests go without asking them about the pandemic that we are living in. So,
Yes.
what are your learnings? And I hope this is the first pandemic that you have
Oh, me
uh,
too.
lived
Yes.
in, and the last.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so, what are your learnings from the year 2020 and 2021, and
Mhm.
the amazingly terrifying times that we are living in?
Yes. Yes. Fortunately, this has been my first pandemic. Like you say, hopefully the last.
Uh,
I think one thing that I learned was that when we were kind of forced to take a little bit of time away, fortunately our labs weren't closed for long, only a couple of months, but during that time we weren't able to go into the lab, and we just had to take that time away to read and to think and to plan. And actually that time was incredibly valuable, because it meant that when we came back, we had implemented some plans, some tests, for instance, of our system that we probably wouldn't have implemented if we'd been in the lab day in, day out, focusing on our day-to-day work. So I hope that I'm never kind of forced by circumstance to take time away so drastically again. But I think more often I plan to take a little bit of time and distance from the lab to really reflect on what I'm working on and where that's going. And I think that would probably everyone would benefit from having to do that a little bit as well, or not having to, but choosing to.
Choosing to, yeah.
And I think as well, the pandemic did, I think I was lucky here that within my research group, the pandemic did bring out the best in people. I think we all became a lot more understanding of the challenges that each other were facing, a little bit kinder to each other. And I really hope that understanding and that kind of value for kindness just continues more broadly in society, but also within a research group, so that we can build a research culture that just is that little bit more compassionate and caring. And I think that would help to address some of the challenges of research that we've discussed, and just create a nicer environment to work in as well. So I hope that those are two positives that can come out of this pretty terrible couple of years.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on that positive note, thank you very much for taking the time speaking with us, and really, really looking forward to having you on Real Scientist Nano, taking over the Twitter account to tell us all about your cool science. Yes, I had to make that joke one last time. Sorry.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening. To know more about us, please visit our website, realscientistsnano.org, and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.